So we are delighted to welcome an innovator, entrepreneur, and George Washington alumnus back to campus. Dr. Errol Arkilic is currently the CEO of M34 Capital. Now, I probably wouldn't have known this unless the dean mentioned it to me, but you may be wondering what M34 stands for. That's Mach 34, which is the velocity required to escape the Earth's gravity. Is that right? So, and that's very fast. I suppose, fast capital is a concept that maybe we'll have illuminated a little bit. But it's M34 Capital, investment company that he founded in 2014, and that turns science projects from academic and corporate research laboratories into business opportunities. Dr. Arkilic received a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from the George Washington University in 1991, a doctorate in aeroastroengineering from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in 1997. He began his career in the private sector in 1997 as manager of product engineering at Redwood Microsystems. In 2001, he founded Strategent Life Sciences and was its founding CEO. That's a specialty startup that pioneered needle-free drug therapies for various diseases. In 2003, Dr. Arkilic joined the National Science Foundation, where he served as the lead software and services program director in the Small Business Innovation Research and Technology Transfer programs. From 2011 to 2013, he led the creation of the NSF's Innovation Corps program, which we all know as I-Corps. As the program's first lead director, he was instrumental in shaping how I-Corps trains scientists and engineers in translating their research into marketable products. And we at George Washington are particularly interested in this program because we really do understand its value. We're a partner in the DC I-Corps node, and that's a regional collaborative that involves Johns Hopkins, Virginia Tech, and the University of Maryland at College Park. And through that work in I-Corps, we're providing scientists and engineers with the tools and the skills they need to commercialize their research. If I understand the methodology, part of it involves a kind of boot camp in which those who are undergoing this kind of training to prepare them for marketing their products are actually talking to customers. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, over a number of weeks, it's something like 100 customers that they seek out. Is that right, Jim? Jim Chung, who's our principal investigator on that. They seek out something like 100 customers. And the idea is so that when they're thinking about the work they're doing, they're actually having the potential uses of that technology in mind while it's being worked on. And of course, this all goes back to this extraordinary initiative coming out of NSF. I-Corps really has done important work, and we're proud that an alumnus of GW was so influential in its creation. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome now, ladies and gentlemen, Errol Arkilic.
Thank you, Dr. Knapp. M34 is 25,000 miles per hour at standard temperature and pressure, and it is the escape velocity required to get out of the Earth's gravitational field. And the joke is that 25,000 miles per hour is about the same speed you need to get outside of an academic lab, too. So that's Mach 34. I've been with Mach 34 for about 3 years, and we do focus on academic spinouts and also spinouts from the federal lab. It is a pleasure for me to be here. Not too long ago, about 20 or 25 years ago, I was a student at GW, and I was in mechanical engineering while I was here, and spent the best 4 years of my young adult life in Washington, D.C. I love this city. I love this institution, and it's a great privilege for me to be here today. So thank you. I think the reason David asked me to be here is because the background and the fact that I'm just a couple of years older than the students who are here in the room today as well. So as I was preparing for this talk, I realized that there was a tension. And let me share with you what that tension is. The speaker at the front always wants to be erudite and meaningful and deep, and perhaps actually say something that changes somebody's lives. And the audience wants it to be, well, short. And so there's this tension that takes place. And I was sharing this tension with my wife, talking to her about this notion. And she said, life-changing, under 20 minutes, honey, that should be no problem for you. You conceived of 3 children in under 15. That's real love for you. And I want to let you know that I've been married for 25 years to this darling woman. So there's three things that I want to talk about today. First, the importance of people. Second, the importance of methods or process. And then third, the importance of becoming a student, a deep student of what it is that you're doing. And I'm going to begin by saying that most of you in the audience who've been studying engineering or science really have been trained up in this very powerful process called the scientific method. And I'm going to talk about the scientific method in the context of exploring the unknown. Because what you have as you start to take your technology out of the lab, what you have as you start to build a company, what you have when you go to work on a new project, when you're being an innovator, is you have a bunch of unknowns. And there really is only one tool that we know available to mankind to explore the unknown, and that's the scientific method. And the scientific method is something that you're going to use over and over again throughout your careers when you are faced with the unknown. And the scientific method really is four things. This is what I thought. This is what I did. This is what I learned. And this is what I'm going to do next. And if you apply those four principles, this is my hypothesis, this is my experiment, this is my insight, and now this is my new hypothesis. If you use those four principles when you explore the unknown, you are driven toward truth. And that's the power of the scientific method. You're going to use the scientific method throughout your career, and you're going to use it whenever there's an unknown. And I want to compare and contrast exploring the unknown with exploring the not known. And what do I mean by that? Is that some people realize that they have to take a product into market through something like the FDA clearance or through some regulated environment. And in that situation, you're going to find that there are people who have done that hundreds, thousands of times, and they know how to do it. Your job is not to learn that through exploration. Your job is to find those people and do the research to find that process. That's totally different than exploring the unknown. Basically, it's identifying people who have been there before you and you benefiting from their knowledge. That's exploring the not known. That's called research. They really are different. Scientific method applied for the not known, research applied for the scientific method applied for the unknown, research applied for the not known. Our previous panel, those of you who had the privilege to be in the room during that conversation, heard over and over again about the importance of going out and talking to a customer. And the reason why that is so important is because you don't know going in what value you really are providing, or in fact, if you are providing any value to a customer. And your job, your responsibility, is to figure that out as you start to build your business. At M34, we focus on projects that aren't much further along than the projects that we saw upstairs. But one thing that they have done is they've talked to 200 customers. And I use customers as quotes because they're also channel partners, they're also technical partners, there are also people that are willing to provide capital. And so 200 is the number that you should be thinking about. Previously, we had thought about going out and talking to 2 or 3 people was interesting and special. It's not. It takes about 200. So I wanted to share that number with you. I also want to talk a little bit about people. So this was also brought up in the previous panel for those of you who had the opportunity to be here, is that there is nothing more important to you and to your organizations than being able to work with people. And some of you will have a privilege of being able to lead people. And what you will find is that without people, nothing else matters. So we can talk about ideas. Ideas are cool. They come from people. We can talk about rule of law. Rule of law is cool. We're fortunate in the United States to have a pretty robust legal system. It's run by people. We can talk about IP protection, also people. And finally, we can talk about the importance of actually figuring stuff out. And that's exclusively a human endeavor. In fact, I think we're the only people, really, the only entities that actually do that. So I want to really emphasize that those of you who are doing projects with peers, what you're really working on besides just the project is learning how to interact with people of other discipline. And you don't necessarily have to like the people that you're working with. And many of you who go into industry, you'll find that, there's some things about the people you're working with you don't like. That's okay. But you have to respect them. And it's important for you to understand that the difference between liking and respecting. And respecting is listening to somebody who's got an experience or an angle that you don't have. And I just want to say to you how really critical that is. I also want to share with you a joke that one CEO once told me about whether you have to like or be friends with the people that you work with. And he said, yeah, most partnerships really are difficult. In fact, they're tough. And then he said, but there's one thing. Revenue and profits are the world's best deodorant. So your partners do not stink when you are successful. And I think that's something to remember. And success, as you all know, is often brought about as a result of many different skill sets, many different types of people, some of which don't get along, and that's okay. So it's okay to be constructively confrontational, but constructively, and in a way that is, in a way that moves the ball forward. I want to end with a couple of comments about entrepreneurship. So again, this was a theme that came up in the previous panel, and I can't say it more succinctly or better than they can. I can just say it differently. And that is that every one of us who is graduating into this environment is going to be an entrepreneur of some sort for the rest of their lives. Gone are the days when you can go to a research lab and have resources thrown at you to conduct research. Those days don't exist anymore. And so you have to be able to attract the types of resources that you're going to be able to, that you need in order to pursue the opportunity that you have in front of you. The innovation that you have and the opportunity in front of you is only able to be pursued if you can gather those resources and pursue that resource. I once had a boss who said, I got some good news and I got some bad news. And then he asked me which one I want to hear first, and I say, well, give me the bad news. And it turns out that he'd give me the bad news, and there really was never any good news at the end of the day. It was all bad. That's not the case here. And so when I'm saying to you that there's some good news and there's some bad news, there really is some good news. The good news is that we know a lot more about how to convey opportunity, how to pursue opportunity today than we did even 10 years ago. And this is the final point that I want to leave you with. When you are thinking about the notion of entrepreneurship and innovation and gathering resources to pursue an opportunity, I want you to think of it as a practice. It is a practice. And there are many brilliant people that have written reams on this topic. And you won't necessarily learn it in a classroom. You may learn it through Jim's I-Corps program. You may learn it through the School of Hard Knocks. But I want you to understand that you should be a student of it. You should become a master of it. And as you master it, you'll get better at it, and it will get easier. The first time that you do it, you may end up figuring out that there is no business opportunity at the end of the day. You couldn't gather the resources. The person that you were trying to sell to didn't care what you had. The timing wasn't right. There's an infinite number of reasons why projects fail. The second time, you'll be a little better. The third, fourth, better still. But don't use only the School of Hard Knocks to get up the learning curve. Study it. Become a student of it. Those of you who do will become much more advanced and progress much more rapidly than those of you that don't. That's the good news. The bad news is that everybody does it now. And so the competitive situation is much more than it used to be, and that's the reality of the world. So I want to take a moment here to ask you, as you're walking out tonight, 4 questions. What are you doing to contribute to society? And the answer better be something meaningful. That's why you became scientists. That's why you became engineers, I think. It's because you want to solve problems. And then the 3 points that I made earlier. Who are you doing it with? Who are the people around you? Surround yourself with great people. Great people have great things that happen to them. And you should strive for that. How are you doing it? Are you process-oriented? Do you use the scientific method? Do you pursue the unknown? Do you progress step by step, methodically through? And then finally, become a master of it. So those are the words that I want to leave you with tonight. I have a few minutes for some questions, and I hope that you will join me upstairs after this to look at the posters. Thank you very much.
We have time for a couple of questions. Anybody else wants to ask a question? Wow. One, do you want to ask a question, Dina?
I think I can try. So you speak about learning from the School of Hard Knocks. I'm curious as to what was the hardest lesson that you had to learn?
The hardest lesson that I had to learn. There's so many. I think there was a situation once when I was a CEO of one of my startups, when I was backed up against the wall with respect to whether or not this company was going to succeed, and we were out of money, and the technology wasn't where it needed to be, and we didn't have validation, and we had to strike a bargain, a Faustian bargain, so to speak. And we knew going in that this relationship was going to be tough. And it was. I used to have the color, my color hair was the same color as your hair. And what we found was that this was another situation where when you're entering a partnership, the people around you have to be sterling. And we were in a difficult spot where we had to take some bitter pills, and that process, that whole activity, was a very harrowing experience, and not one that I would recommend. But we were in a difficult spot. We lived to fight another day, and it all turned out okay in the end. But there was a lot of scar tissue associated with that relationship. If I had had it to do over again, I would have planned better up front to not have to be in that difficult spot from a financing standpoint. Does that answer your question? So that was a hard knock situation. Please.
Okay, one more question.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
So one of the things, and you're in venture capital, one of the things I've noticed in starting a small company is that there is a lot of aversion to any risk. There's a lot of aversion to risk, both in research and in terms of developing new ideas and executing the scientific method. I feel like it's almost, you're allowed to do the scientific method as long as you don't ever have to get to that second hypothesis. So how do you get around that cultural aversion to risk that I think we have right now?
That's a great question. So there's 2 ways that I'm going to answer it. One is that the aversion really, I think, is not of risk, it's of the unknown. And the unknown is scary. And if there's not a way to cast the unknown as a gap that you're getting across, then you're really launching into the unknown. And so that's one thing. And I think a lot of people confuse the notion of risk with unknowability or error bars. And so one way to address effectively the notion of risk is to couch it in a term of experimentation. In order for this to be true, this opportunity to be true, we need to prove this element out. And what we're doing is we are getting across this gap. If we get across that gap, then this continues to be true, and then we take the next step. And then we take the next step. So you break it down, but you don't say, yeah, we're launching, and we might get to the other side. That's the first thing. The second thing is really, it's closely related to that, and it has to do with the notion of how should I say this? You really want to, you know what? I'm just going to stay with my first answer. It's so good. I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.